Supergirl, the Woman of Tomorrow, the film, is adapting this comic almost one-to-one, and so we're going to cover it. But what we have to do is talk about a girl named Ruthie, because everything that goes on with her is the entire basis for everything Supergirl does in this comic and the entire story of Supergirl, the Woman of Tomorrow. So what this does here is it opens up with a statement, "My father, whose name I will not record here, for I do not wish it learned, did not die a dignified or honorable death. A criminal and a thief, a liar, who at the time identified himself as Krem and claimed the Yellow Hills as his place of origin, stabbed my father through a coppice blade. Krem had come upon our rock farm the day before, requesting shelter and a meal, which he was granted by my kind and godly family. After he woke up in the morning, he got into words with my father on the subject of our new king. These words were ended when Krem unsheathed his weapon. My dear father was unarmed." Now, there is a whole explanation that does come for why her father died in the first place. So this is one of the most important aspects of the story, and it's important you keep this in the back of your head, because what she says is, "It vexed me at the time that Krem left his blade within the body, for in truth, it was a finely crafted sword, worthy, I would think, of even the knights of the old mist. I can testify that it was not lodged so deep within the chest cavity that it could not be removed with alacrity even in the moment of murder. If a child, which I was at the time, despite my many protests to the contrary, could claim the weapon with a simple tug, what was it that prevented Krem from rescuing it? I had meant to ask him, and even had the question on my tongue, when Supergirl and I eventually found the filthy man, and he was begging for his life with tears in his eyes. But Supergirl delivered the fatal blow, and Krem fell dead to the ground before I could get it out. And so it remains a mystery to this day. But I am riding ahead of myself, as I tend to do, but should not. And so allow me then to continue on the more traditional path of storytelling to better illuminate our beginnings in order that you might understand our ends." Tom King does a hell of a job writing this comic, and Bilquis Evely does an incredible job drawing it. I assume that's how you pronounce their name. Honestly, I've never really been able to pronounce it effectively, so I apologize if I'm butchering it. But Ruthie continues on. She says, "I am blessed by Crying Anne with 6 brothers, all of whom are elder to me. And that evening at Inn's feast, they were all yelling mad at one another, each one with a plan of vengeance. But having spent enough of my days watching pigs squabble over their own castles of mud, I knew what was show and what was not. It was a noble sort of bluster, but nonetheless, each of them understood the outcome before a voice had been raised. Krem of the Yellow Hills was likely a king's agent sent here to test us, for even in the plains where the king is loved, there may be doubters. As our cherished father had aptly demonstrated, offending a king's agent was the start of a quick journey to the grave. Better to whine and buck at the farm than to leave and have your head spiked, so whine and buck they did. And when they were done, all agreed that everything should be left to the divine. They would stay here and tend to the rocks. I, however, did not." Now, this is one of the cool things, because what you guys are probably starting to pick up on here, this really has themes of true grit. Both the old school original with like John Wayne, I'm pretty sure, as well as the newer one. And if you don't really feel those vibes, you will as this goes on. Because what ends up happening here is that she actually has a conversation with her mom. And it's one of these things where the two of them are kind of coming to an understanding of what happened, but also trying to figure out what comes next. Because her mother says, "And may I ask where you are going in the midst of the fine moonlight, Ruthie, my darling one?" And the response of Ruthie, "I did not expect to see you, mother. I hope the death of my father has not caused you poor dreams." And of course, she responds, "You are a mite young to be seeking through the world hoping for blood. Maybe you should listen to your brothers and sit and wait for amends to come. But one of the vibes that's put on here by Ruthie is she's too impatient for that. In her mind, her father was killed unjustly, and justice should be served for the death of her father, regardless of what the reason was for his demise. And so when she takes off from the family farm on a horse, basically trying to find someone that can avenge the death of her father, she ends up coming across another bounty hunter, which is really kind of the term for a king's agent. And this guy says, right, you've tracked a king's agent across the plains to here, to the whale tower, and you need someone to tote you over those mighty barricades and help you kill the poor ox. Even if it was feasible, it wouldn't be cheap. And the response of Ruthie, right, I did not come to you because I thought that you would be cheap. I came to you, sir, because good folks tell me you are the most ruthless bounty inside the city walls, and I have need of a ruthless man. And so she takes out the sword and she presents it to him, right? She says, see here, if you examine this sword, you will find it of high quality and worth. As I have traveled, many well-practiced smiths have offered me the sky for it, but I have no need for the sky. And the bounty hunter just kind of takes it, right? And is like, no, you have need for a ruthless man. Now, this is an important thing here because Ruthie responds as she says, the blade will be provided to you when I witness the death of Krem of the Yellow Hills, right? When I witness his death, whether that is to your satisfaction or not, I would appreciate a reply as rapidly as you are able. For every moment that passes that Krem breathes the air above pains me, like a wound that will not heal. Ruthie learns very quickly the reality of the world that she is in, which is to say, the real world is not a fair place. Sometimes the good guys don't always win. Sometimes they lose. And when they lose big. And that's kind of what goes on here, right? This guy says, then let us say it is agreed, but not exactly on your terms, child. I will take the weapon. It is quite lovely. And I will get your man by my word. You will return home glad in the knowing that your wound has been seen by an expert and treated with both compassion and grace. So basically, I'm taking your sword and leaving, and I'm going to kill the guy. You have to believe me. There's no real guarantee here. But again, she says she wants to witness the death of Krem, right? She wants to see the lights leave his eyes. That's really what she's shooting for here. It's a mission of vengeance. And so that's when she says, you are unintelligently mistaken in presuming an invite to a negotiation when no such offer has been proffered. If you return my sword, I will explain to you the need for the specifics of my proposal and why compromise is entirely unworkable. And he just says, no. Right? From your speaking, I see you're well educated for a young one from the plains. But let me give you one additional, rather vital lesson that perhaps your teachers have not yet covered. Please listen close. And he just backhands the girl, right? Sends her flying. And he just says, now remember that. And do not worry none while you're remembering. Your king's agent will suffer at my feet. And that is when Supergirl appears. Because in that moment, she grabs the sword as the guy is walking by, just grabs the hilt. He doesn't really understand what's going on. But something to know here is that Supergirl is plastered. This girl is blitzed. She's so drunk. She is so out of her mind drunk, right? This guy's just like, have I been uninformed? Is today the festival of impertinent females? Remove your hand or I will remove your fingers. And she's like, what? No, just stop for a second, right? Look, I'm going to take the sword and give it back to that girl. And you just go away and we won't fight because it's my birthday. And this dude's just like, I have neither the time nor patience for any of this foolery. If you have gods, perhaps take a moment to express your respect for their benevolence, as you shall soon be meeting them eye to eye. And that's where she's just like, don't be mad. I'm 21 now, right? It's official, which means it's okay. That's the truth and the justice and the American way. Supergirl is having a hot girl summer, y'all. And that's where he just says, like, you've had your warning. And she's like, no, don't do that. That's stupid. And he's like, now I shall have your blood. And she's like, you're still doing it. You're still being an idiot. And she's like, just wait, right? A minute, just please. And that's where the guys are like, a surrender. Wise. Perhaps you do not wish to greet your lords this day. And she's like, no. no, it doesn't have anything to do with that. It's just, I don't want to waste any of this drink that I have, or this stuff that you got. I don't have any more of your weird coins, and I don't steal because it's wrong, even if it is my birthday and I deserve it. And he's just like, what is this, man? Like, what are you going on about? Now, as most of you guys know, drunk 21-year-old girls are some of the most annoying people on the face of the planet. But Supergirl is just like, okay, it's done, right? Like, she drinks this alcohol, and she's like, you can keep going, you know, but like, it's probably going to hurt you, right? We can keep going if you want to, but you know, you're going to be the one that's in pain. She grabs this bottle and smashes it against this guy's face. And he's like, you dare. And she was like, oh, I forgot about the stupid red sun, right? Because she's in the presence of a red sun, right? She literally came here to get drunk. And that's where the guy's just like, that is only the beginning of your pain, for I will not be turned buffoon by some woman. And it doesn't make any difference at all, right? Because she literally helps this guy understand his place in the bigger picture, flips him over onto his ass end, and just like standing there with a sword to his chest. And so following that, she wakes up in what's basically one of the hotel rooms in this place, right? And like, Ruthie is the one that nursed her back to health. The problem with this is that Supergirl is also hungover. So as you imagine, the next few minutes are just going to be her praying to the porcelain gods. But Ruthie's just kind of like, you speak often of these swear words, especially when your agony becomes acute. This is your husband. And she's just like, I'm gonna throw up. I'm sorry, right? And I assume that maybe she's talking about Krypto. I don't know why she would think that Krypto is her husband. But Ruthie just says, right, you may give it your best effort, but it seems to me you must have expurgated any foodstuffs you had been carrying by now. And that's where Supergirl's just like, I was not wearing this. You're not supposed to know that this outfit exists. And that's where Ruthie's just like, I mean, though I may have been raised in the company of 6 brothers, I am not unaccustomed to other women's undergarments, though I can see that yours are certainly unique in their color and ornament. And she's like, here, I have just cleaned the floor enough, right? Like, don't puke all over the floor that I just cleaned, girl. Now, it is kind of hilarious to see this contrast between Supergirl, who just kind of speaks the way you and I talk, and Ruthie, who's just like very, very polished in how she talks, right? Speaking the Queen's English, essentially. And that's where she directly introduces herself to Supergirl. And she says, I am Ruthie Marie Knoll, and I am witness to your skill and bravery. I would like to hire you to kill Krem of the Yellow Hills, the cheating king's agent who slew my father and left him in the dirt. Have you interest in such an arrangement? And Supergirl just like looks at it for a second and then just starts puking her guts up back into the bucket again. It's hilarious seeing party Supergirl just absolutely drunk. She's like a rave chick. And that's where Ruthie's just like, take your time, right? Like, I can wait. And so following that, Supergirl goes to leave. She ends up getting on a boat, and Krypto, of course, is there along with her. And Ruthie spends like the whole time trying to convince her, right? She's like, perhaps you do not understand the worth of the weapon, though I would hope the Bounty's interest in procuring it through ignoble means would be evident enough. And again, that's where Supergirl tells her, not interested, right? Like, I am sure it's very nice, but where I come from, I don't need swords. And of course, Ruthie responds, pish and posh. Everyone needs a sword. Pish and posh is my new favorite phrase, by the way. And she says, I once saw my virtuous father attacked by a 6-legged monogriff. Had he not had his sword, he would not long have had his life. And Supergirl's just like, look, you know, you're very persuasive, I am sure, but you should work on someone else. I am not staying here. It was my birthday. I needed a red. I came here to drink. I did. Now I'm going home. People need me there, and I am not a hunter or a bounty hunter or whatever, any kind of a king's agent. So she's just like, goodbye. Best of luck. Don't kill people. It's bad. She just kind of dismisses this whole thing. Now, one of the things that you're probably also picking up here is that Ruthie has a very sheltered life. She hasn't really experienced anything outside of essentially kind of like her local community. She's never really experienced the rest of the world, and she's certainly never left the planet, which is going to become one of the coolest elements because she is going to grow very, very quickly, very, very fast. But in the moment, we do get this amazing glimpse of her character and how headstrong she is, because she says, had I let her go, our lives would have gone on their separate and unique paths with little consideration for the other. Supergirl would undoubtedly have returned to her prodigious adventures, protecting those in need as she lived up to her well-earned values, and I would have continued in my hunt for the damnable Krem of the Yellow Hills, eventually confronting him face to face, where, based upon my later experiences, I do wager he would have taken my life and danced with great mirth over my fallen body, had I let her go, which I did not, because she beelines directly after Supergirl, and she says, as I went, I could feel the jawbones nipping at my skin, testing and tasting. Fortunately, they are a fearful lot this close to the shore, and my motion in the swim was enough to convince them to hold off a swarm. Tuckered out, I'd be an easier meal, which was all the motivation I needed to keep my arms and legs pumping. The most cumbersome obstacle was Krem's sword hanging heavily from my belt, dragging against the sea as I pushed forward. I was tempted on a number of occasions to release the weapon and allow it to descend peacefully into the deep blue, but I managed to remind myself each time that it held my father's last blood, and the seafloor was not its capping destination. Eventually, and thankfully, I reached the shore. The burn and scratch of the sand on my feet felt like a baptism, and I welcomed it as a babe welcomes the smile of a kindly priest. Now I am quiet, but I am not silent. Under a yellow sun, Supergirl surely would have heard me coming and begged me off, but at the time, she was deprived of the senses that provoke envy among gods, and I was able to track her back to what I can only describe as the indescribable, because she's never seen a spaceship before, and Supergirl is there on a ship. Keeping in mind, this world orbits a red sun, and red suns basically neutralize the powers of super people, super persons, right? Superman, Supergirl, Superboy. So it's one of these things where she just kind of has to travel based on traditional craft. And when she realizes Ruthie's there, she's like, what are you doing here, right? You are not supposed to be here. I've already started the auto launch. You have to move away or you could really get hurt. And she's just like, Ruthie, are you listening? And Ruthie is so captivated by seeing a spaceship, she doesn't know how to process it. And she just says, my apologies, right? I am perplexed by the machine from which you have emerged just now while again clothed in your underwear. And Supergirl's kind of getting frustrated here, right? You know, she's just like, look, I'm not from here, right? This is it's kind of like a horse, right? What I use to get home. It's what I wear, like, in this outfit, this is what I wear out there. And you have to leave because this horse is getting ready to go. And when it goes, it bucks hard and you will get kicked and I don't want you to get hurt. But again, even in the face of all of this and the constant dismissals by Supergirl, Ruthie refuses to let it go. And she just says, my name is Ruthie Marie Knoll. I would like to hire you to kill Krem of the Yellow Hills, the cheating king's agent who slew my father and left him in the dirt. Have you interest in such an arrangement? And again, Supergirl blows her off and says, you seem like a very nice girl, but I can't go with you to go off and kill someone. You don't know this about me, but I have a job, a very responsible job that I have to get back home to do. And the first rule of that job just happens to be, don't kill people. And she says, look, I understand your anger. It's hard to lose somebody, but you have to look for justice, not vengeance. It's like my mother said, life is about compassion, not fury. And in that moment, Ruthie snaps and she loses it. She doesn't know anything about the story of Supergirl, and where she starts to chastise Supergirl and saying things like, you don't understand anything, right? I didn't lose somebody. I lost my blessed father, who was my heart. I will never see him again, not on my bridal day or any other. He is gone. And all that flighty talk of compassion and fury, that's dandy if you're living on ground you know will stand solid. Now, the funny thing about this, what makes this so ironic, is that, as you guys know, Supergirl has a tragic past, right? The whole idea behind Supergirl's story is that she was older than Superman was when he was sent away from Krypton. Superman was a baby. Supergirl was older than that. She was old enough to remember what life on Krypton was like. Now, unlike Superman, who was sent away on a rocket ship, Supergirl and her family escaped on Argo City, quite literally a gigantic city that survived the destruction of Krypton. But over time, right, the explosion of Krypton, shards of kryptonite, it all kind of came crashing down. it caught up to them anyway, and then ultimately, she was fired out of a rocket ship from Argo City as it floated through space, meeting its demise, in the same way that Clark Kent was. She shows up on Earth, spending a lot more time in space than Superman did, and then of course becomes Supergirl. But at the end of the day, whether it was seeing the first-hand destruction of her family following Krypton's destruction as they were on Argo City, or Superman just being rocketed away and learning secondhand in the Fortress of Solitude, it all amounts to the same thing. It's a story of tragedy, a story of loss, and never being able to go back. But it's the fact that Ruthie is so caught up with herself emotionally, she can't see the forest for the trees. She can't see past herself. Now, that's just a byproduct of youth, right? Believing that your struggle is the only real struggle out there, and no one can ever truly relate to it because they haven't struggled the way that you have. Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but Ruthie's not the first person to lose someone. Here's one of the things that's interesting is that this whole story is told in hindsight, as you can probably already tell. And so Ruthie says, now understand, I didn't know the history back then. I knew nothing about her growing up on a planet with friends and relations and seeing all of it go to dust. I didn't know that she had lost everything only to gain invulnerability, because in that moment when she's talking to Ruthie, she's shot through the chest with an arrow, right? Literally, Krem has caught up to them, but only because of the fact that Krem was warned by the bounty hunter that Ruthie initially tried to hire to kill Krem. And he says, right, bounty tells me you're hiring people to kill me, girl. I have paid him well to help me find you. Now, of course, Krypto jumps into the fray because he's not going to sit around and let Supergirl be attacked. But you know what? Krem didn't want Krypto to be a part of this fight, so you know what he did? He shot him. He shot Krypto through the chest with an arrow. Supergirl is incensed because at that point she jumps up, right? Because as you guys know, the #1 rule, do whatever you want to do with the humans, right? Shoot them, torture them, fire them into the sun, but never, under any circumstances, do you harm the dogs. You never harm the dog, right? You never bring pain to a dog. And so Krem, having no idea what he's up against, because he's never heard of Supergirl, neither has Ruthie, right? They don't know who these people are. That Krem says, I thought I had her in the first shot, but whatever, and just fires off another arrow and hits her again. And Supergirl's just like, swords and arrows. Like, that's really what this whole society is? That's all you have are swords and arrows. And that's where Krem says, do you think she has any idea of the cost of this equipment? By Saul, I pray that there is coin on her body. And Supergirl's like, don't you even know who I am? I am Supergirl. Do you think I give a crap about swords and arrows? And in that moment, right, Ruthie chimes back in and she says, I was not as uninitiated to battles as you might assume due to my youth and the gentle reputation of my gender. There were thieves and robbers on the plain, and I saw them scrap mightily with my dear father and brothers. I've seen many a time when two men were convinced only one of them would emerge from their baneful conflagration. But until that day, I never saw anyone so unafraid of death that they understood in their heart and belly a simple and perfect truth. There was no one alive stronger than they, because immediately Supergirl takes out one of the bounty hunters, and Krem, realizing what's happening, takes off as fast as he possibly can. And Ruthie says this, right? Which is why it did not surprise me when Krem ran. Any man would have. Though she was torn with pain, I think Supergirl would have followed if Krypto had not let out that whine. She could not leave him alone. I myself tried to stop the Cretan, and I am sorry to say it had little effect on his progress. He was staunchly determined to get in that ship, probably just figuring to find shelter somewhere to knock his arrows and start up shooting again, not knowing that the great machine was already started, and that Krem of the Yellow Hills, killer of men, women, and dogs, was about to escape my clutches and flee into the stars. With that being said, guys, we're going to bring this to an end. Let me know if you guys want me to cover the rest of the series. There's 7 more comics that are left in this. It's an 8-issue miniseries. If you guys do, we'll probably cover it as like a secondary video on the channel with our main video, and then we'll do this one like in the evenings. Let me know what you guys think. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.